Education of the heart. Father Mermier's vision of teaching as mission. My dear brothers and sisters, when we think of Father Peter Mermier, we often recall him as a zealous missionary, a preacher of parish missions, and the founder of our congregation. But there is another side of his vision that is just as vital, his passion for the ministry of education. From his earliest days as curate teacher at Magland, professor at Milan, and parish priest at Châtelard, he recognized the serious problem of illiteracy, especially in rural areas. Children, and particularly girls, scarcely knew how to read. Without education, people were vulnerable, not only socially but spiritually. Religious indifference grew where there was ignorance. For Mermier, education was not simply about learning facts, it was pastoral work, it was missionary work. He insisted, education of the heart is the heart of education. The first point for our reflection today, education as a work of love. Father Mermier's method was clear. Love your pupils, be a mother by your tenderness and a father by your prudence. He believed education cannot be reduced to knowledge alone. Teachers must form the whole person. This required affection, patience, and firmness. Witnesses recall how deeply he cared for children. Sometimes he would make their beds, sometimes he combed the hair of the youngest boys or helped them rid themselves of insects. These small gestures revealed his heart. Education without love is incomplete. Yet, his love was not indulgence. He combined tenderness with firmness. He was loved but also respected. Students knew he wanted their good, and that made him both approachable and authoritative. The second point for reflection today, fighting ignorance and indifference. In Châtelard, Mermier saw firsthand the damage of ignorance. Many children could not read, and faith was fading. He could not stand idle. He personally hired a schoolmaster, lodged him in the presbytery, and paid him salary from his own pocket. His sacrifice bore fruit. 10 of those pupils gained admission to higher studies. More importantly, children were formed in faith. Here we see his conviction. Education is not a luxury, it is essential to Christian life. By teaching children to read, he was also teaching them to pray, to know scripture, and to love God. The third point for our reflection today, the daughters of the cross. Mermier's concern extended especially to girls, often excluded from learning. To respond, he founded the Daughters of the Cross. Their mission was to educate girls in both knowledge and faith. His advice to them was practical and wise. Be serious without being severe. Correct with love, and let children feel loved even when disciplined. He told them, towards the little girls of your school, be serious but without bitterness. They must love you. For him, education had to form not only intelligent minds but also tender, faithful hearts. The fourth point for our reflection today, the great discernment, Avia and Milan. At a certain point, Father Mermier faced a major decision whether the MSFS should take charge of colleges like Avia and Milan. He hesitated. His main worry was that colleges often failed to produce better Christians. He also feared that such responsibilities would distract the congregation from its missionary vocation. But he also saw the opportunities. Schools could serve as nurseries for vocations and training grounds for future missionaries. They could provide the academic and spiritual formation needed for ministry both in Savoy and in India. After much discernment, prayer, and persuasion from the bishop, he accepted the management of Milan, even though the buildings were dilapidated and resources scarce. His trust was in providence. He wrote, "The distress of a country as poor as Savoy in an institution as poor as Milan seems to me a sufficient reason to take it up." By doing so, Mermier showed that education could serve the missionary charism of the MSFS. Fifth point for our reflection today: opening hearts, not just minds. Mermier was deeply critical of education that produced clever minds but empty hearts. He observed sadly, children who leave colleges are usually without religion, even enemies of it. They go to mass like soldiers to their drill. Why? Because many schools stirred up pride, competition, and ambition instead of humility, faith, and love of God. For Mermier, true education meant forming character, not just filling the brain. He preferred family based education when possible because it was more natural and close to life. But if schools were needed, he wanted them to be fully religious, where faith was not an afterthought but the foundation. He summed it up beautifully. True education is opening the heart rather than the mind. The sixth point for our reflection today: the teacher as witness. For Mermier, teachers had a sacred responsibility. They were not only instructors but role models. Masters should practice themselves what they teach to others. He emphasized constant presence. Teachers were to supervise students with affection, not harshness. They were to win the respect of children by their knowledge, their upright lives, their self control, and their kindness. He also urged unity among teachers. Children quickly notice disagreements among adults, and such divisions destroy credibility. Education succeeds when teachers are united in love and purpose. Above all, teachers were to inspire confidence. They were to form both good Christians and good citizens, a man of God and a man of the world, as he described it. The seventh point for our reflection: knowledge, wisdom, discipline. In a meeting with students, Father Mermier once expressed three wishes: knowledge, wisdom, and discipline. Knowledge because it is the starting point of education, decided by parents and necessary for society. Wisdom because knowledge alone is not enough. It must be directed to God's purpose, following the example of Jesus Christ. And discipline because without order, respect, and moral strength, no education can endure. This triad, knowledge, wisdom, and discipline, remains a timeless formula for integral education. The eighth point for our reflection today: education as missionary work. Why did Mermier ultimately embrace schools and colleges despite his concerns? Because he saw in them a way to prepare missionaries. Education was not separate from mission, it was mission. Schools became nurseries for vocations, training grounds for future evangelizers, and places where the gospel could shape the next generation. In his vision, education and evangelization walked hand in hand. The ninth point: lessons for us today. What can we take away from Father Mermier's vision? Let me suggest a few lessons. First, education must be holistic: mind, heart, and faith together. Secondly, education must be rooted in love, tenderness, and prudence. Thirdly, religious formation is essential. Without faith, education remains superficial. Fourthly, teachers must be witnesses. Children learn more from example than words. Fifthly, unity among educators is vital. Division destroys credibility. Sixth, schools are missionary ground, seedbeds of vocations and centers of evangelization. To conclude, the heart of education. My dear brothers and sisters, in a time of ignorance, poverty, and growing indifference, Father Mermier responded with a vision of education that was pastoral, missionary, and loving. He believed that every true education must form the heart. Today, when education is often reduced to technical training or commercial enterprise, his challenge is more relevant than ever. We need schools that form not just skilled workers, but men and women of faith, character, and compassion. Let us remember his words: love your pupils, be a mother by your tenderness, and a father by your prudence. This is not only good pedagogy, it is the gospel lived out in the classroom. It is education as mission. It is education of the heart. Live Jesus.